Okay, thank you so much again, everybody, for being here. It's an absolutely beautiful spring day where I am. I hope it is that way for you as well, wherever you are in the world listening to this. And again, if you're listening, as always, I deeply, deeply appreciate it. I know there's a ton of other podcasts out there, so I always want to say thank you for stopping by. I'm your host, Coach Brad, and this is the Be Well, Be Safe, Be Happy, Eat Ice Cream podcast. And I know I keep saying this time in and time out, but I am just so blessed and fortunate to have incredible guests. And as always, this week is no different. My guest this week, her name is Kim Keane, and she is a life coach, motivational speaker, and bless her heart, a parent and teen expert. She works with moms and dads on helping their daughters get through the teen and preteen years. And Kim, welcome to my podcast, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And bless your heart. My goodness. I coached and worked with teens for years, especially teen girls. I know what a challenge that is. So bless your heart for targeting that particular population.
Yes.
I'm sure that's full of a lot of surprises. And
yes. And I have two daughters on top of it. So
okay. There you go.
We're preteens. So I get it all from all angles.
Oh my goodness. Well, that won't be the focus of our podcast today, but certainly another time we could spend an entire podcast just talking about the subject of teenage daughters and girls.
Would love it.
And whatnot. But for those listening and for you, Kim, the reason I brought Kim on today is she's a motivational speaker and she has a program called Love Yourself First. And that's what I wanted to talk about today with you, Kim. And the reason I wanted to do that is part of what I'm trying to reach with my whole idea and philosophy of be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream, is that this idea of a happy, healthy, safe life and journey, it all starts with loving yourself first. I think that is one of the key secret ingredients to making this all happen. And so I'm blessed to have an expert with us today, Kim. What is love yourself first? What can you teach us about that? That's such an important topic.
Yeah, so it really stemmed from being in an abusive relationship as a high school student. So I was with my high school boyfriend from the time I was 15 until I was 21. And I didn't really like him. He was not on my level. So he was like the quote unquote loser at school who was always getting in trouble. And I was the straight A student who was participating in extracurriculars and things like that. And he was very persistent. But I had this belief that I learned at home inadvertently from my mom, who has suffered a lot of childhood trauma, that you need a man to be worthy to be loved. And so I had this idea in my head that I needed a boyfriend, and there weren't really any other boys knocking at the door. So here he was, and he was very, very persistent with flowers from the high school flower shop and changing his schedule to be in my classes with me and all these things. So I finally relented and was like, fine, I'll go out with you. But 6 months in, I really didn't want to be with him anymore. And my parents said we couldn't see each other, but I stayed anyways because at 16, I was stubborn and I thought I knew it all. And so I was really in this relationship looking for this love and this acceptance that I really never gave myself and didn't really know how. And it wasn't until after I left that relationship that I realized that I was in that relationship for all the wrong reasons and had no boundaries. Really, everything about me depended on what he thought, what he said, what he felt. And so when I left, I was really this blank slate of a girl still at 21, trying to figure it out and reinvent myself to be this person that he said that I was always going to be, that no one would ever want me, love me, want to be with me, marry me, all of these things as a ploy to get me to stay with him.
Wow. That's huge. So take us through that. How did you start to pull out of that and come up with this idea of love yourself first? And how did you go through that transformation?
Yeah. So I continued being in unhealthy relationships because I still had this thought like, I have to prove to myself that all the things that he said weren't true. So it was one unhealthy relationship to the next. And finally, at the ripe old age of 22, I decided that I had had enough. I was going to be single for the rest of my life, and anything that I ever needed, I was going to do on my own.
Okay.
And then,
I love it. Okay.
2 months later, I met at the time, my boyfriend, but who is now my husband of 14 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was like when I had stopped looking for what I thought I needed, it showed up at my door. But but I just really, so then therapy and life coaching came into the mix, and it was really a lot of struggle. And I didn't go to therapy, at 22. It wasn't until almost 30 that I started therapy. When I left my teaching career, I thought I was having an identity crisis. And that's when all the lovely things about childhood trauma and this abusive relationship came bubbling to the surface. And I realized that the relationships were a pattern, that I was running this pattern to have this certainty and this feeling of significance and this feeling of love and connection, that at the end of the day, I really needed to be able to do it for myself. And so that was like a learning process of letting go of the limiting beliefs that I wasn't enough, that I would never be loved. And it was interesting because I was married at the time. So to still think that I would never be loved was really a kind of like an oxymoron almost, because I had this loving relationship with my husband and two beautiful kids, but still it wasn't connecting completely. And so when I realized the root cause of this pattern, I was able to say like, oh my gosh. And so I just started to do things because it felt awkward to give myself self-love because I had never done that before. So I really just started doing baby steps, like really taking time to figure out what it is that lights me up, what feels good, what makes me feel happy just for me individually as a person. So spending time with myself, which felt really awkward.
So what time with yourself, is that you're generating more self-love then? Is that for folks listening at home? I'm trying to think how they start to come out of it. You started to spend more time with yourself then, and what shaped it, or what form did that take place?
Yeah. So, like taking myself out to lunch and just going to a favorite
Okay.
place and just sitting there and focusing on the good about me rather than what all the things that I thought were wrong with me, and allowing myself to treat myself to getting my nails done, because I love getting my nails done, but I always felt like, oh, that's, frivolous. I shouldn't be spending money on that, blah, blah, blah. So like saying, no, Kim, you are more than worthy of going to get your nails done today, and taking myself to actually do it and enjoy the experience while it was happening, instead of sitting there with this overburdening feeling of guilt.
So, okay, now I'm starting to understand. So, what I call in my health coaching circle, you started to really make yourself a priority.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's when things started to change for you then.
Yes. And also taking time to, I was getting the mind piece together. I was working on the limiting beliefs and the thoughts. I was getting the body piece together because I had started doing yoga. I had started running, and running was such a game changer. I always say, oh, I'm not a runner, but running, oh my gosh, whatever it does to your endorphins and the chemicals in your body, I always felt so much better after a run. And also I love to dance. So allowing myself to go to Zumba 2 days a week, and looking at myself in the mirror, because that was a challenge to do Zumba and look at myself in the mirror while I was doing Zumba during class. I would always stand where I couldn't see myself, but forcing myself to stand in front of the mirror and appreciate that I was able to go to Zumba and that my body was able to do the movements, not always great and not always gracefully, but the ability was there. So it was just that sort of shift, and not only making myself a priority, but also putting boundaries in place with my time and with other people.
I can certainly appreciate and understand what you say about the mirror. I've worked with a lot of clients over the years who have said that exact same thing. I want to point out for anyone listening, so this is huge right now, because we talk about having a healthy lifestyle or a healthy journey, and Kim and I are using the same language, or saying the same thing, just using slightly different language. So I say prioritize yourself first. She is saying self-love. And absolutely, if you want to start this journey or anywhere in this journey, it starts with prioritizing yourself, or as Kim says, loving yourself first. Kim, I want to go back real quick. You said you had this limiting belief that you weren't worthy of love, or something along that line.
Mhm.
How did you recognize that limiting belief, and how did you begin to shift that to where you believe now that you are worthy of love, I guess?
Yeah. So I can't say that it was like this huge monumental thing where I was like, oh, now I'm worthy. I think it was more of a gradual process as I went through the healing journey, because I realized that, going through therapy, there is value there, but it wasn't the best experience for me. Going through that actually ended up being more resentful and angry and hateful than before I started the therapy.
Oh, wow.
Um, yes, because the therapist that I was seeing, we clearly were not a good fit.
Okay.
And she just wanted to medicate me. And she was really great at telling me all the things that were wrong. So she was like, do you know you're codependent? Nope, never heard that word before in my life. So I went home, Googled it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I most certainly am. I am codependent. So then I was angry with my family because that's a learned behavior from my family, both my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family. And then, she was like, do you realize you're anxious? And that was really where the medication conversation started to come in, even though I was adamant I didn't want the medication. So for over a year and a half, she pestered and pestered and pestered. And so I refused the
Real
entire
quick,
time.
if I could jump in real quick.
Yeah,
Did you take the medication then, or?
no,
So you were able to get through all of this without medication.
yes.
Yeah. So real quick, anyone listening, that's huge right there. I'm not a doctor and I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to, you don't need medication. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, I'm sorry. Continue, Kim. Yeah.
yeah, so I think there are times where people do, but for me, I just felt like I looked at myself as a failure because I didn't stay in my teaching career. And so the fact that I would then need medication to be able to cope with the everyday life would have been like the epic fail for me.
Oh,
And
wow.
so she was like, this medication will give you the stairs to climb out of the ditch so you're not clawing your way out every day. And I said to her, I will claw my way out of that darn ditch every day before I take a pill. So that was also an added layer to it. And then the last piece of the puzzle was that she was like, do you know that you are affected from childhood emotional neglect? And I was like, well, yeah, now that you say it, it makes complete and total sense.
It's a
But I
big
never,
term there. Another big
yes,
fancy term. Yeah.
yes, big fancy term. So each time she gave me this label, I then went to the library and I got a book on codependency or anxiety or childhood emotional neglect. And I really dug deep and I studied these books relentlessly. But I realized at this point I was blaming everyone else. I was angry at my parents, why, how could they do this? They chose to bring me into this world and then they raised me in this dysfunctional, nonsense and this is awful. And, the woe is me card. And it wasn't until I realized that, hold on a second, Kim, they did the best that they could with the tools that they had. It's time to take personal responsibility. And so I started meditating. I started doing yoga regularly. I really started to look at me and appreciate me for all the things that I was able to accomplish, considering the circumstances that I was raised in, which at the end of the day weren't catastrophic by any means, dysfunctional, but not catastrophic. So, and it was those things, that little bit of introspection and self-appreciation, that was really, I'll say, the starting point for really shifting to say okay, Kim, you really are worthy. And not to mention the fact that we're all worthy because we're all here on this planet for a reason. So understanding that too was the big picture, but the smaller picture was just taking the steps to appreciate myself for the strides that I was making, not just in that moment, but through my whole lifetime.
Two questions come to mind as I listen to you. This is an incredible story. Wow. I'm glad when I bring guests on, I don't always like to know the full story so that I can be right there in the moment with them. When you were starting to expand your journey and go from this place of not being worthy and not loving yourself to being worthy and loving yourself, what did you have an end goal? Okay, I'm not worthy now, I'm going to try to become worthy, or what were you aiming for, or anything like that? Or
The biggest end goal that I had was that I break the cycle for my kids, because I was like, I
Oh,
cannot continue this. I cannot allow my children to grow, because I thought at the time when I was in this period of really deep self-hatred, I thought to myself, the last thing I want is for my kids to grow up and be like me in this moment, in this state. So I just thought, I have to change this. And if nothing else, if not even for me, for my kids, for my daughters, so that they can grow up to be empowered and not have to go through quite the struggle that I did. And so, of course, everyone struggles in some way, shape, or form. But I was like, if I can minimize that struggle
mm,
and make myself a better person in the process, then I can say, check, I did a good job.
okay. Well, that leads me to another question before I get to that other one I was going to ask you, but that's huge to do this for your children. Is that still your motivation today, or has that shifted?
No, my girls are still a huge motivating factor for me. But I would say that now I'm in a place where I can see the benefits of all the work I'm doing, because I can see my girls processing things that they experience at school and with friends and just in our own family dynamic. So I think like, okay, my girls have a good foundation. And so now I'm at the place where I think, okay, and so now I can continue building myself to be the person that is fully living my purpose in a way that delights my mind, body, and soul.
And so you've kind of got that foundation now built for you that you used your daughters to help you build, literally. So it's literally your daughters literally saved you
Yes.
aspect. And now you have that foundation. You can build on it from there. But okay, so this is the other question I wanted to ask you, because for folks who are listening to this, you cannot see Kim right now unless you watch the video portion, but I can see Kim. You can hear her tone of voice. I can see it in her eyes right now, and in her facial gesture, or whatever that word is, gestures. And this is a huge part of anybody's journey. And so, Kim, what I want to ask you is, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not committed at all, not determined at all, and 10 being completely committed and determined, where would you say you were on that scale in terms of creating this new you?
Oh, it was a 10,
Yeah.
without a doubt. It was an absolute 10, because I knew if I didn't commit, it was not going to be good. My husband, I knew my marriage couldn't survive it. Because the whole reason I left my teaching career is because I was miserable. I was a burnt out public school teacher. And it got to the point where my husband was like, you cannot go back to being a teacher. You have got to find something else because you're just straight up miserable and no one wants to be around you, mostly me. So I knew that this was the crossroads where if I continued on the path that I was going, I was going to go up in flames. And so I had no choice but to take the other path, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a product. My parents divorced when I was young, and I was like, I can't have that happen. I can't have the possibility of losing my kids, even just having them part-time and share. That was not even a possibility for me. So I said, you know what, this is a must. I have to do this. I have to.
Yeah. Again, if anyone's listening, if you can, take 10 seconds and rewind and listen to again and again and again everything that Kim just said. I'm just gonna kind of summarize, because there's so much key stuff in there that you just said, Kim. If you are at a place where you want to go from point A to point B, and you want to get to this place of self-love or become the new you, create the new you, there's 3 really key things that we're learning from Kim's story right now. So 1, she had an underlying reason. She had a why. And initially, as she said, that was her kids. The second part of that, kind of a 2-for-1 here, that you must have if you're going to, create that new you, is that commitment and determination. And Kim absolutely had that. And now, as we're seeing with you, Kim, once you build that foundation of the new you, so to speak, life kind of just really, that's when life really starts to take off. You mentioned about living more in alignment now with your higher purpose and your higher calling, and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And not to say that there aren't times where I don't backslide a little bit, but the difference between now and then, I mean, because we're human, so we're always going to have a bump in the road. I always say I like to ride the kiddie coaster. And before, I was riding the adult roller coaster that had turns and loops and huge ups and huge downs. And now I like to try to ride the kiddie coaster that has none of that, but is just more, smaller ups and downs, so that it's a little easier to navigate and not quite so scary. But the difference is now is that I know how I can recognize when I'm triggered. I can recognize the pattern, and I know how to shift out of it. And so that's really the difference, is that when I get to like a point where I'm feeling a little bit stuck, or I feel like I might be backsliding a little bit, I can say, wait, the alarm bell sounds a little bit sooner. So it doesn't get to the place where I was so deep and down, 6, 7 years ago.
Is it just like a greater awareness in, or just like a greater awakening? Like, hey, I know something's going on. I can hit the alarm bell. Like, how do you know something's going on? Is it a feeling, or what is it?
Yeah, so I can catch myself when I get into the negative thought loop. I'm like thinking to myself, oh no, these are not the thoughts that you want to have to
Oh,
continue
okay.
to move you forward. But I also feel it. So whenever I get stressed or I feel anxious, my heart races. and it's just that jittery kind of feeling. So I know the difference between an excited heart racing and a stressed out heart racing. And so I immediately know, okay, this is a heart racing and not a good way. So something isn't right and I need to do something to change it.
So your body's giving you kind of these subtle biofeedback type cues, and you've learned to recognize that cue as, okay, I need to put the brakes on and make an adjustment, reframe my thinking or my thoughts, or something like that. Is that kind of what it is?
Yes. And because before the feelings were there and the thoughts were there, but I didn't allow myself to sit in it long enough because I just wanted to run from it because it feels awful. And so I'm at the point where I can recognize it because in that journey, I recognize, okay, something's not right and I need to sit in this and I need to figure out what isn't right instead of running from it. Because honestly, when you go through a period of transformation, it can be scary because you don't know what's on the other side of it. And oftentimes it's safer to stay where you are because even though that doesn't feel great and it's awful, at least it's safe and you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So like really forcing yourself to say, okay, I recognize that something isn't right. I don't really quite know what it is, but instead of running to cope with it in a way that hasn't been working for me in the past, let me try something different and let me just take a minute and pause and just think this through and recognize what's happening around me. What did someone say something to me? Did I get an email? Did I get a text message? Did I see something on social media? And then using that information to assess the situation and say, oh, okay, I get it now. That seeing that person say that they just got a promotion at their job and I've been wanting a promotion for 6 months at mine and I haven't gotten it yet is a trigger for me to say, oh, they're better than me, or it's never going to happen, or whatever the case may be, and recognize, okay, is that 100% true? No, it's not. Since it's not true, this is how we're going to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. Kim, I'm going to point out something else that is huge part of your journey. Again, for those that are listening, another real huge part of this journey when you want to go from point A to point B, when you want to create the new you, is exactly what Kim is doing, and she is taking personal responsibility for her life, for her behavior, for her well-being. So when these cues come up, even through at the start of the journey, and all the way through it, but especially now when these cues come up, Kim, you're noticing them and you're doing something about that. You are in control. You're not letting the heart rate or whatever you mentioned control you, so to speak. So, Kim, you've come a long way in your journey. I know one of the questions you had on your profile there was, what would you tell the you of today? What would you tell the you of old when you were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old? What advice would you have for yourself?
Yeah, it's the biggest thing that I recognize now. What I wish I had known then is really don't rely on others for your happiness. Don't rely on others because it's never guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is what you give yourself each and every day.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, it's not conditional happiness based on what someone else is doing to you or for you or on your behalf or something like that. It's really what you do for yourself, and taking ownership of that.
Yeah, because and that was how I got into this position. I was relying on someone else to say, "Yes, Kim, you're amazing. Oh, you're fantastic. I love you." But that was never a guarantee. And so, and it's the same, with our kids. I realized, outside circumstances are vehicles, and at any point in time, they can be taken from me, taken from us. So, like, I recognize that my kids are a vehicle, my husband is a vehicle, my house is a vehicle, the dogs, the cat, they're all vehicles. And so, the only thing that is 100% guaranteed at the end of the day is me. That's it, because I don't have any control of what happens with them or in the circumstances with them. I only have control over what's going on with me. And so that was really the biggest thing that I realized is that I need to focus on me and make myself the priority and seek it from me and stop seeking it from others. Now, if I get it from someone else, it's an added bonus, but I have to do it for me first.
Yeah. And now, Kim, when really at the beginning of this journey, you were married, as you said, and you had two kids, and you were doing all kinds of other things, working a job and all that. There are so many people out there that say, well, I've got this going on, family, work, blah, blah, blah. I don't have time, but I can't stress enough. to create the new you, you have to make yourself the number one priority. And Kim, you're living proof that even when you are married, have two children, do you have any pets at all?
Yes, we have 2 dogs and a cat.
Well, there you go too. So that's even more because pets need to be cared for and all of that, and that's extra expenses and all that. So I'm s- there's so again, your situation, I don't know what it is if you're listening at home, but again, that there is a way, no matter what you have going on in your life, where you can take that ownership, make yourself that priority. And it all starts with, again, I use the word making yourself a priority or that self-love. When you start to take care of yourself first, and Kim, I think you'd probably agree with this, when you take care of yourself first, you're much more able to take care of everything else going on in your life. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely. And so, and in all fairness, I didn't do a great job of taking care of myself first when my girls were little and I was going through this journey. Again, it was a lot of relying on, I would get frustrated because my husband's work schedule is incredibly demanding. So there were times where I'm taking at the time she was 2 or 3, with her, taking her with me to therapy and then coming home exhausted because I cried for the whole hour in therapy and still having to parent her. So then it was, okay, where does it work for me to fit this in my day? So then it was, my husband got home from work and I would say, okay, the kids are yours for the next hour. I'm going up, I'm meditating, I'm writing in my journal, I'm reading my devotional book. And I need this time. And that was really a challenge for me to ask for that initially. But I started to recognize that I was becoming angry and resentful that I wasn't getting that time. And so again, I was the only one who really could make it happen. So then it was, when Casey would nap, I would sneak in some things there too. But really, so it's hard because it often feels like there's not enough time, but it's just starting small, because if you try to do too much at once, it can feel awkward and uncomfortable if you're not used to that. So it was very small. It was 2 minutes of meditation, writing in a journal. That was where I started.
So again, it goes back to you're committed to your journey, you're determined. And then another key aspect of all of this, when you want to create the new you, is you've just found a way to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I knew it was a non-negotiable. And then I also had this, not only breaking the cycle for my kids, but I wanted to be a role model for them for when they're adults and they're married and they also have children, that you don't have to sacrifice yourself for your family and make yourself the last priority. How to be a good mom and a present spouse, a present mom, but still making yourself a priority too, so that you don't get burnout, you don't feel resentful. And so I also had that running through my head is, oh my gosh, even though my girls are little, they're watching everything I do. They're listening to every single thing I say and repeating some things where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you just repeated that. Don't ever repeat that again.
Yeah. Kids learn by osmosis, really, not so much what you say, but the energy that you put off and the vibe and all that. I'm curious, Kim, you're a life coach. Let's do a little quick role play. Let's say I'm a
Sure.
client and I come to you and I'm on the couch and I want to start this journey and I'm you when you were 18 and oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. How can you help me, or how can you help me to help myself? I guess, to get started and get off the couch, so to speak.
Yeah. So the very first session I have with my clients, we do this "Who am I at my core" exercise, where they write down who they are at their core. And they're required to come up with a minimum of 10 things. If they can get past 10, fantastic. And sometimes they struggle and they'll come back the next week and be like, oh my gosh, I could only think of 5. So then their homework for the second week is twofold. You still have to finish week 1's homework because I need you to think of 5 more things. And now you have week 2 homework. But really having them look at that, who am I at their core, is eye opening, especially when I did it with my coach, because I had so many positive things written down. It was, I'm outgoing, I'm adventurous, I'm caring, I'm compassionate.
Mm.
I hadn't written really anything negative. And the other piece to the puzzle is they're not allowed to write, I am a mom, I am a daughter, I am a sister, because those are all vehicles and those can be taken. So they have to write things that describe them, attributes about themselves that really describe who they are as a person. And sometimes clients will have positive and negatives. And so then we talk about, is that the person that you are when you're in survival mode? Or is that really who you were born and meant to be on your time here in this body? And the light clicks and they're like, oh no, that's how I am when what hits the fan.
I do. Yeah. No, I do. For anyone listening, if you are interested in working directly with Kim, she is a life coach. And if you find yourself on the couch and dealing with some of these issues, reach out to Kim. You can contact her directly through her website. It's kimkeane.com. I will put a link to that website on my podcast description, but kimkeane.com. Kim, so I'm curious. I'm halfway through the journey now, and I've fallen off the horse, so to speak. And I'm trying to, like where you were, create this, this new me. And you mentioned a little while ago that sometimes you have setbacks and something. How do I get back on the horse? What's your advice for that?
So that's where this lovely thing called leverage comes into play.
Okay, what's leverage?
So leverage is where you look and you think, and leverage is different for everyone. So my kids are really great leverage for me. So when I would fall off the wagon, my coach would say, well, is this the version of Lily and Casey that you want them to remember when they're adults? And every time I would cry and I would think to myself, you not nice word of a person. Like, you just punched me in the stomach when it hurts. And so she would say, I'm sorry that you feel that way about me right now, but is it true? And then it was that realization, like, oh no. And so my kids are really great leverage for me, but other people leverage could be money, leverage could be their marriage. It could even just be time. So the other really big leverage for me is, is this the version of yourself that when you get to be 80 years old, you want to turn back and see?
That's the
Oh, no, it's not. So then I'm like, okay, I have to make some changes because I don't want to get to that place and look back and be filled with regret. So for me, time is also a really good leverage point. So that's really the thing, is it's like reevaluating your why, because also our why changes on the journey. So maybe the why has changed and it's not strong enough for that person to want to commit to any longer. And maybe they have a new why. So it's reassessing that why to see if it's still aligned with what they thought when they first started. And then also using that leverage point to get them back in the saddle and get them back on track with what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and again, that's another huge part that you just mentioned. This part about when you fall off the horse, you kind of recognize that, and you kind of just take it by the reins and learn to just get back on that horse. I've kind of lost my train of thought here. I wanted to say something else, but so Kim, when with your motivational seminar that you do, let's go real quick, because I know there's my predominant age group is about 40 to 60 or so, but for teens, how does this message relate to teens and everything that you're saying?
Yeah. So when, and I mostly do this, this particular workshop in a college setting for sororities, but it falls back into my empowerment program that I have for teens and tweens. We just break it down into sessions where we focus on a different concept of self-love in each session. So whether it's self-esteem or boundaries or healthy friendships. But this particular thing is where I really focus with the girls in the sororities about seeking respect from themselves first and allowing that to show up in their relationships. Because when you don't love yourself, you tend to settle for what people are dishing out to you, even though it's not what you really want, but you feel like there's nothing else. So this must be as good as it gets. And so taking them from my journey of the end of the abusive relationship, when I said yes to the jailhouse proposal and staying with him while he was in jail for a year, and how that didn't really pan out. And I didn't even want to get married, but I said yes to the jailhouse proposal because there was a promise that things would be different, and they weren't. And again, it was scary to leave. It was safe to stay. And how that looks, what that looked like for me to say, okay, I am done. I am leaving, and figuring out what I didn't give myself and what I needed.
And so again, if you want to work with Kim, this is incredible. Like, Kim, I'm just kind of meeting you for the first time today, but learning a lot about you. You've been through the journey and you've learned a lot. You can offer a lot. KimKeane.com. I want to follow up with what you just said, and then also go back to where I kind of had a brain freeze there for a
Yeah.
second when you're when you fall off the horse and getting back on. This idea of slowly shifting from I'm not worthy to I'm worthy. A key part that you did that I wanted to mention a second ago was you really started to focus on the mom that you wanted to be for your daughters and the type of person that you wanted to become. And again, and that was actually part of my journey too. Anyone listening, you can go back, listen to my first podcast and hear my story. But it's, you mentioned the exercise you write down at least 10 things about who you are, and it can't be a vehicle like, I'm not a mom or sister or something like that. But who is it that you want to be? Who is this person, this new you that you want to be? So for me, I always ask people, let's create a vision of that new you. What does this new you look like? What are, Kim, you mentioned the 10 things. Mine are happy, healthy, safe, be safe, be happy. That's kind of where that comes from. So focusing there, oh gosh, there's so many pointers we've come out of this, Kim, and I'm looking at the clock. I see we're starting to run short on time here, but this last one about focusing on that person that you want to be. So, Kim, you've got a ton of stuff. We've said a ton. Again, KimKeane.com. Kim, is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered already for any audience, anywhere, anything?
Yeah, I think the last piece of the puzzle is to give yourself grace in the journey because it's not always easy. It often feels hard. It often feels painful. And often, so I have clients who come back, they'll do an 8-session package with me, and then they'll come back, periodically when they feel like they're falling off the wagon. And when they get to that place, they feel like they have just completely failed. I'm like, wait a second, hold on. You don't stay stuck in that situation as long as you used to. You don't get stuck as often, and you don't stay as long. So you don't go as deep, you don't stay as long, you don't stay as often, you don't go as deep into it as you used to. And so keeping those 3 things in mind too is also helpful because it gives you that feeling of like, okay, yeah, I'm having a moment where I'm doing a little backslide, but I'm not where I was when I first started. And so if you can keep that in mind too, it helps with the journey because you can see that you are getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. It's
Yeah.
just a little bit of a detour. There's just a little bit of curve in the path, but the light is there. And so just really focusing on the fact that you're not getting stuck as often, you're not staying as stuck as long, and you're not going deep into that mental nonsense spiral that maybe you did before. So that would be the other thing, and that falls back into the grace and the compassion and having that with yourself.
Yeah, that's huge. This idea of not getting stuck. I want to emphasize that for everyone too. Just to share with you a quick story, Kim. This happened to me just this week, actually. This past Monday, I have no idea why, but I was stuck. I'll call it a rainy day, gloomy, cloudy, dark clouds, rainy, and I didn't really know what to make of it. But I woke up the next day, and for whatever reason, I can't explain, it was the complete opposite. It was bright, sunny. So you may have a rainy day in your life, but the rain doesn't last forever.
That's right.
That's kind of navigating life. I mean, life's a journey. You've got a
Yeah.
rainy day 2 3 days in a row, and then you may have several sunny days. And Kim, you obviously are a living, breathing, shining example that the sunny days are starting to take over more and more. But you do still have an occasional rainy day now and then, but it's not the end of
Yep.
the world when you do.
That's right. And some days it does feel like the end of the world. And it's okay to have those feelings too, because I just know that the storm, like you said, the storm doesn't last forever and the sun is on the other side of that rain cloud. And so just, that goes back to just being understanding with yourself and just saying, yep, this is what it is, process it, feel it, and then let it go.
Yeah, Kim, I appreciate so much you being on the podcast today. Again, we're starting to run out of time here,
Yeah.
but again, I definitely encourage you reach out to Kim, KimKeane.com. I'll put a link to that in my podcast description. But Kim is obviously a shining example of resetting her course, becoming the captain of her own ship, as a phrase I learned the other day, or captain of her own life. Again, if you're listening to this, reach out to me, reach out to Kim, kimkeane.com. It doesn't matter where you are in your life right now, homeless, poverty, got fired from a job, divorced, bankruptcy. We've all been there. I've been there. Kim's been there. All these things that Kim just said about loving yourself and setting your compass, focusing on what you want. Okay, yes, you fall off the horse, but it doesn't last forever. You get back on and the sun will shine again eventually. Definitely encourage you to reach out to Kim. So kimkeane.com. Kim, I'm about to wrap up. Anything else for the good of the order?
I think that's it. I just really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah. I look forward to swapping roles here down the road. But I also look forward, like I said, to having you back. There's a ton more stuff we could talk about it. At some point, I would like to kind of do a special segment just geared towards the teenage audience. So we'll get together another time to talk about that. But again, kimkeane.com. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I super appreciate you being here. Until next time, this is Coach Brad. As always, I say, be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.